If you want to be more effective in your work and in your life, and you'd like to have more confidence that you're meeting your intentions, this is where it begins. Welcome to Do Busy Right, helping you organize your information and manage your attention so that they work for you, not against you. We educate you and encourage you by discussing ways to be more effective, not more exhausted. Let's do busy right. Hi there. Today I want to talk about another one of the fables. Now, I've been calling these lies, but I think I'll go with fables now and forward. It's a little softer and gentler, and I don't want to just be clickbait for everybody. The fable I want to take on today is this notion that it's quick and easy to figure out what I should do, or I just know what I should do, and it shouldn't take much effort to figure out what I need to do. I think that's a fable, and I think there's a corollary to the fable, and it is I'm wasting time managing my stuff when I need to get things done. It's a fable for a reason. The spoiler alert here is it's not that easy, and no, you're not wasting time managing your stuff. You have to manage your stuff. We'll get into it. And I'll talk about why. So the goal is figuring out what we need to do, and to figure that out in ways that will produce tasks that get done and move the needle for us, because that's what it's all about, is delivering. For now, I'll say we have the following mindset, and it leads to poor management. I'm going to talk about a mindset that I think we have. And it is, I'll just get to the office this morning, I'll whip out a piece of paper, I'll make my to-do list, and then I'll start working. It'll take me 38 seconds. I'll figure out the list of things that I need to do, and I'll get started doing it, and I'll just snap it out. But if this is our mindset, then when we create the list, our brain works against us. It means that we don't give enough thought to what it is we need to do. Now, it takes some time, and I'll get into investing that time and how to get that time back later in the podcast. I recognize that it does take some time, and I recognize the temptation to short circuit it. The other thing that I recognize from clients, a lot of people I talk to say, you know what, Larry, I don't need some big system to track what I need to do. I just need to do things. I need to do things. And my comment back to that is there are certainly some cases where the job is simple enough that you just go in and do it. There are some jobs where you go sit at a desk and there's a stack of things on your left side in your inbox, and there's an empty outbox on your right, and you pick up a paper and you check a couple of boxes and you sign it and you put it in the right hand box. But these jobs are few and far between. I think they don't pay a lot, and they're disappearing very rapidly. I mean, computers are replacing these kinds of jobs. We're working on process improvement in many, many organizations, and somebody that has that kind of job would generally be considered a target for some kind of improvement. But you don't have that kind of job. If you're listening to this podcast, you're probably a knowledge worker. And knowledge work is not nearly that straightforward. It's not picking up a piece of paper and checking boxes and putting down a piece of paper. Simple does not describe your job. And even if you don't think your job is wildly complicated, I'll guarantee you that simple does not describe the combination of your job and your life. So we do knowledge work. It's work we do with our brains as compared to doing work with our hands. It's probably done on a computer, knowledge work. And it has to do with taking in information, processing information, and producing new and different information. If you're creating PowerPoint slides, or you're editing reports, or if you're trying to figure out what the marketing plan is, then that's knowledge work. And I'll say, In our world, and perhaps this is just true of knowledge work is not routine. It probably involves a new version of something, or if not, a completely new thing, or some decision that we have to make, or some problem that we have to solve. And none of this is routine stuff. Again, routine work process stuff, we've been pushing that at computers as fast as we can for the last 20 years now. I used to build these kinds of systems, and we had gotten pretty good at it before I quit doing it, and that's been 15 years ago. So I assume we've gotten better and more penetration, and more of these processes are now in computers and being done cheaply and well. So since most knowledge work is not routine, it's also less procedural. So you may have a general sense of what you need to do. Oh, I need to create a new document, and that's fine. But it's not as simple as creating another instance of an existing widget out there on the factory floor. It's not as simple as filling out a form or taking information from a client and jotting it down in the system. It's thinking, it's processing, and it's not defined by a specific procedure we can follow. So we have to think about what we're doing, when we're going to do it, how we're going to get it done, and all of these different facets of what's going on in our lives. And then outside, our lives are as complex as any human life, in my opinion, has ever been. Our society, our culture, the amount of information we deal with on a regular basis puts us in a situation with this huge complexity in the American middle class. It's no longer enough for you to read the paper in the morning, go to work all day long, come home, have a quiet dinner with the wife and kids, and then watch TV until bedtime. That's not what we can do. We've got too much going on. And it's the culture that's driving this. We've got kids to deal with. Maybe you've got church to deal with. We've all got these commitments. We don't do bowling leagues anymore, but we sure go to the gym a lot. And we go play golf, and we hang out with our friends, and we got to wait in line at the restaurant, and all these things. We all have these other commitments. Maybe you're in school and have to deal with all those commitments. Life's complicated, and your work is probably complicated as well. If we have these complicated work management challenges, we can't just think that away and think that it's quick and easy to deal with. When we're deciding what to do, when we're managing ourselves, it's not, well, I'll just knock it out. I can do it quickly. That's not a workable approach. It's not the best approach. I've managed knowledge workers, and y'all are tough to manage. And so when we have to manage ourselves, we're also tough to manage. What do we do? What's the priority? How do we do it? So if we take this shortcut, then here's what typically happens. Most people start from zero at some point from a blank sheet of paper. So let's say Monday, go, okay, I'm going to start my list over from scratch. Make a list of the things that they think needs to get done. And this takes them about 45 seconds or whatever it is. And, they just ask their brain, what should I be doing? And they get a list of things. They check email, they write a few things down. Great. So we're doing this throughout the day. And at the end of the day, some of it's done, some of it's not done. We still got the piece of paper. So we go home, and then tomorrow we come back and we say, okay, well, let me get the piece of paper from yesterday, and then I'm going to make a new piece of paper for today. And there's things on yesterday's that I need to bring forward and all these sorts of things. And we do this day in, day out. But several challenges. One is there's no guarantee that the list is an accurate list. Two is stuff's getting on it faster than stuff's coming off of it. And then what happens is that we get more than a piece of paper can hold, and we just throw our hands up. We go, oh, okay, well, this ain't working again. Let me throw this away, and I'm going to start over again. And this happens over and over and over again. And at some point, many people just skip the whole process and they just do what they think they need to do in the moment because the planning process has not proved valuable. And then we fuss and complain about our work not being meaningful and valuable, and we're not getting promotions because left in the moment, we'll do the trivia. So we got to get on top of that. We got to manage that. And I would say we need a better, stronger tool than the to-do list because bad tools break in unpredictable ways and they frustrate us. And it's just because we're using the wrong tool for the wrong job. We're using the wrong techniques. We're trying to manage a complicated situation with an overly simple tool. And oh, by the way, we're asking our brains the wrong question. Now, the shortcut to the end here is what you need is a backlog. And when I say backlog, to folks that don't understand it, it just seems like a list, but it's more than that. A backlog is a list that's managed in certain ways. If you don't manage it in those ways, it's not a backlog. But if you do manage it in those ways, then it'll be very valuable for you. And it's management and it takes some time. But I'm here to tell you a single list on a piece of paper is insufficient to govern our lives by in 2024. When we do it the poor way, we have mental challenges. It's very failure prone. And by that, I mean the wrong things get on the list and they get on the list in the wrong way. We think priority and we think what we need is priority, but our brains don't do priority easily. What our brains serve up is urgency, typically, not priority. And priority is not instinctive. Priority needs a lot of thought. And if we don't give it that thought, we get bad answers. And we use those bad answers and wind up doing the wrong things. The other thing that priority needs a lot of flexibility. Priority can change really quickly. And you know this. And so a lot of people go, well, it's a pain to redo my list when I have to be flexible. So I'm just going to throw out the list. No, it's a pain to change the list because it's the wrong kind of list. And if you'll make the right kind of list, right, then everything will be okay and it'll be flexible and it'll accommodate this. So there's several mental challenges, and I've mentioned this earlier. And the first kind is the flexibility kind, right? I mean, we don't really know the future, and that's a mental challenge. So sometimes we try to guess, and we're no good at that. The second mental challenge is what your brain serves up when you try and do it this way, when you try and do it off the cuff automatically. Okay, first of all, your brain serves up urgency. Secondly, your brain tends to serve up results rather than tasks. It tends to serve up the ways that the world has to be different. That's a result. That's a deliverable. And we need to know that, but that tends to be these big chunky things. Oh, do the marketing report. Okay. Evaluate the website. Yeah. So we use very short statements to denote these huge chunks of work, and it's unstructured. And when we get these things on our list like this, they're very, very easy to procrastinate. So I did a whole podcast on this. Procrastination is your brain not wanting to address what you're trying to get it to address. And so we get these big, chunky tasks that are mushy and vague, and our brain just runs away and hides it. Our brain doesn't want to deal with that. So we get these things on our list, and they're really, really easy to procrastinate. So that's a couple of the challenges that we face when we try and do this quickly. We get urgent instead of important. We get urgent instead of high priority. We get big chunky things that get on a list and they're easy to procrastinate. And then we wonder why we can't do what's on our list, or why when we're doing what's on our list, we don't get the results that we want to get. It's because we haven't thought about our list. It takes time to think through it. And we just need to be aware of that and manage it appropriately. Somebody, if you have a boss, somebody's devoting time to managing you. And in this day and age of bosses kind of receding, kind of falling into the background, then we got to manage ourselves and we got to devote our own time to do it. And that's just sociological reasons and cultural reasons and business reasons. And so we have to take care of managing ourselves, and that's a big piece here. And of course, it takes time to do that. I'm trying to bring it to cover this whole thing. I'm trying to bring back an old proverbial saying, haste makes waste. And that means when we get in a hurry, we mess things up. And when we get in a hurry around this self-management, we mess it up. We short circuit the process and we're no good at it when we try to do it too quickly. Going fast causes us to miss things. Like in a physical process, if you try and talk more quickly, then you tend to trip over your words. If you try and tie your shoelaces very, very fast, then you struggle to get it done at all. And that's true even more in the mental space, that trying to go fast causes us to miss things, particularly in our task list, because it's easy to miss things. And if we miss things, then it means that the wrong things are on there. And this tool doesn't work for us. So we're either doing trivia all the time, or we've got stuff that's procrastinating. So the legend is out there, and part of the legend is, well, part of the genesis of the legend is we have this dim idea about how projects are managed. And the gold standard for project management is the Project Management Institute, and they've been studying this stuff for decades. And I studied it under them for a good while. But we as lay people go, oh, well, here's kind of generally what they do, and I should do that as well. And so let's talk about what it is they actually do in order to clarify what we need to be doing. So project management is really a focused discipline on a couple or three things. And there's a result, and I'll tell you what it is and how it's used. And then you'll see what I'm talking about when we talk about managing ourselves and what this legend is about here. So the key thing that a project management professional is trying to do, first of all, they're trying to get the schedule complete in a minimum number of calendar days. So they're trying to build a space shuttle in the minimum number of calendar days. That's the goal. It's called critical path. And they do it all the time. That's what they're shooting for, because they want to shorten the schedule so that they can get the thing done more quickly, which should relate to a lower cost. So in order to do this, though, they need to know what the work is and how much work needs to be done. The second thing they're going to do is resource allocation. So they have to know what resources are available to attack the work. And they're trying to make sure that if there's only one electrician available, that they haven't scheduled two electrician tasks at the same time. So that's a resource constraint. That's the second thing that they're trying to do. But again, that's in service of putting all these tasks in a nice little row so that they can be compressed and take the minimum time. Number three is they're trying to identify predecessor and successor tasks. And that's simpler than it sounds. You're very familiar with these ideas. It's, you got to do A before you can do B. So A is a preparatory step. A is preheating the oven before we cook steaks. A is, hey, somebody's got to light the grill, right? And then B is a lot of times where the fun and the meat and the value is, but we got to do A before we can do B. And so project managers are trying to get this straight so they don't get it backwards, or they don't try and schedule these tasks concurrently. Okay. And that predecessor successor task relationship, it's project management is good at finding that. But again, their goal is to organize things in such a way that they can be packed very tightly, so it's a minimum of calendar time. So those are the goals of project management, and they're all through this legend of getting our stuff out together where we can see it. And we do it all the time in our own stuff. We look at a piece of work and we say, okay, well, I got to break this down into meaningful tasks. The problem is it takes a lot of thought and time. And most people aren't trained to do it very well. And it's hard, even very experienced project managers mess this up. There's lots of experts that are coming in to help them look at this problem and help them figure out what all needs to be done. And the end result in project management world is called the work breakdown structure. It's hard to get right. And when they get the work breakdown structure, then they put it into a scheduling system, and then they get out this plan. Now, it's interesting because the trick is that a seasoned project management professional fully understands that the plan is not right and that it does not predict the future. Something's going to go wrong. Something's going to get off plan. Something's going to take longer. Something's not going to be able to be started at the right time, all these different kinds of things. Well, if everybody knows that going in, then what's the purpose of the plan? Well, the purpose of the plan is to tell us when we've gotten away so that we can go in and do something about it, so we can get some management in there. Okay. And so it's an alert mechanism more than anything else. They look down at their chart and they go, hey, person X should be doing task Y today. Let me go check. And they go out and, person X is not doing task Y. So they go, hey, what's going on? And then they can work and exert control over the project. And by control, I mean good control, right? They can see where it's off and make adjustments and start asking questions and dealing with the challenges of getting this done. So it's largely a control chart. It's largely an alarm signal when they do that. But amateurs, we look at the same problem. And again, this is back to the what do we need to do problem. Okay, don't get lost, don't get confused. We do a to-do list. They do a work breakdown structure. But when we look at the things we need to do, we don't understand it that way. I mean, we think the plan is planned to be followed, and we don't manage against that plan usually. And thus, we got to be careful as we build this thing out. Okay, we don't need a control chart as much as we just need, hey, what am I trying to get done? Okay, but that's where all this stuff filters in. But the primary thing that they're doing with this plan, so yes, it's a control chart. One of the primary things they're doing with this plan is they're pre-deciding what work needs to be done. Now, it's important for them to do that so people can plan. The people that need to do the work can say, oh, I've got a piece of work to do on the project next week, so let me get out there and do it. And going back in and fixing the plan is all about when is the work going to happen so that we can get it done. If the plan gets off track, then one of the things the project manager is going to do is go tell everybody, hey, you're the electrician. We thought we were going to need you on November 1st. We're not going to need you till November 8th. Thanks. And deal with it. So they're constantly addressing this thing and tweaking this thing. They're spending time with it. It takes a lot of time and a lot of management. And so they're trying to do it while they're trying to pre-decide what the work actually is. We need to do that as well. We need to pre-decide what work's going to get done. And we look at a priority and we say, well, the priority has to be flexible. So I'm going to decide at the last minute. Well, those two things are not necessarily related. In other words, just because you need flexibility doesn't mean you want to not plan. Good planning supports flexibility, and a good tool set supports flexibility. And so let's be careful about how we think about this. Pre-deciding is good because it's efficient, but you still got to have flexibility. So how do we do all that? I think when we're following the project management legend, I think we get involved in premature optimization. And in this case, the way we get involved in premature optimization is we focus on time efficiency, and we think about packing our schedule very tightly in terms of calendar time. But there are techniques and ways that that gets done in project management, and they're looking for certain places where they can't pack it that tight, and they know what to look for, and we don't do that. So we optimize this thing and we say, okay, well, even sometimes when we pre-decide, we put it on a calendar and we say, okay, 15 minutes. I'm going to do this thing in 15 minutes. And then I'm immediately going to start this next thing. And it's going to take 12 minutes. And then at the end of that, I'm going to start this other thing. And we lose fluidity when we do that. Okay, so we got to think about it. We've got to spend the time it takes to understand what's going on and to respond to it appropriately. We focus on time efficiency and we think about packing in our schedule like a good project manager would, right? Pack in the schedule. But then we're just us. We don't have resources to bring to bear or anything really to manage. So we don't have the tools that those folks have. So we say, well, I've got 15 minutes to do this thing, and I've immediately got to move to this other 12-minute task. And when we do that, we're looking at time efficiency. Now, those of you that have heard the podcast know I talk about how we can't manage time. You can just manage your attention. And this is where the rubber meets the road on this idea. So it happens to me all the time. People prematurely optimize and they focus on time efficiency. I'll have a meeting with somebody and they get in the meeting and they want to have their best productivity game on because I'm the productivity guy. And they're talking to me about how great their productivity system is. And so they want to show out. I'm the same way. I brush my teeth before I go to the dentist. I straighten up the house before the cleaning lady comes. I get it. I don't really have a cleaning lady, but you get the idea. So we have this mental focus on time efficiency, trying to be efficient and productive, but we wind up switching tasks too soon and too quickly. This hyper focus on time winds up making us try to switch too fast and try to switch too soon. We don't finish, we don't get done, we don't clean up behind ourselves. When we're fast task switching, bad things go on. We fumble deliveries because we're in a hurry. So when we're wrapping up a task, we got to have the patience and the perseverance to complete it before we move on to the second half. And by complete, I mean complete. Send the email. Put the document in an envelope with a stamp and an address. Carry it to the mailbox. Put the PowerPoint on the thumb drive in your briefcase the day before. But if we're searching for time efficiency and we've packed our schedule very tightly, then we say, oh, I got to get to the next thing. So we put off sending the email. We say, I'll do that later in the day. I'll say, just as another way to visualize this, I'll say all of this focus on time efficiency really speeds us up. And we think that's a good thing. Mike Krzyzewski, the Duke basketball coach who retired, he was known as a great defensive coach. And he said the goal of his defense in basketball was to speed the other team up, make them feel like they had to rush and do things in a hurry. And then they mess things up. The same thing's true for us. If we feel like we have to be in a hurry, then it takes us out of our rhythm and we miss shots and we have turnovers. Haste makes waste. And our technology pushes us to be faster and faster all the time. In fact, I think that's really the only thing modern technology has done for us, is to make us faster at the things that we're already able to do pretty well. Now, is that efficiency? We'll talk about that in a minute, because I'm going to argue that efficiency and productivity aren't the same thing. But for right now, we get into this time efficiency, this time-focused efficiency thing we're trying to do. And we're thinking hustle culture, and the real negative side of hustle culture is hurry sickness. And we're just always stressed over being in a hurry, and we get in a hurry and we're not doing a good job. Haste makes waste. And so I think we fail by trying to move too fast in the short term. And this is nowhere more apparent than when we're managing our work and we sacrifice thought time for the illusion of efficiency. This is I don't have time to manage my tasks. I need to start doing things. One of my favorite phrases is, don't just do something, stand there, but think about it. I mean, after all, looking at efficiency, the most efficient thing we can do is not take on the task, is to do nothing. It's to use 0 of our time on whatever it is. That's the most efficient thing. But we don't do that. So we get into this false hurry-based efficiency. Thinking about this hurry thing that we try to do. In my previous podcast, I talked about how humans can't be overclocked effectively. We work at the pace we work at. We can get faster, but only in the long term as we better understand our work. A buddy of mine is a college level distance runner, and I'll explain this tempo thing through his story to me. And he told me about training to get faster in running long distances. And he said, the first thing we do is we get a tempo. And you have a natural tempo, and it's really a fair amount of work trying to figure out what it is, because it needs to be this consistent thing that you do. So one of the first things you learn is how to run to a tempo. And yours is probably different than everybody else's. Everybody has their own natural tempo. And tempo is how often your feet hit the ground. So once we get that and we get it sorted, he said they run at tempo for about 80% of practice. So they're trying to get their conditioning at tempo and trying to get in and regulate that tempo. Maybe they're practicing some other things like jumping hurdles, but they're trying to do it in tempo. And he said for about 20% of our practice, we speed that tempo up slightly and work at that slightly higher tempo. We use metronome to do this. And so we have to try to keep our tempo consistent at that higher speed. And I find it a fascinating example. So we want to go fast, but we have to have tempo before we can learn how to do that. And I think we need to work on this in the business world and in our own lives. I think we have a tempo. I think we have a rhythm, and we need to establish it and make it predictable. And only then can we try and speed it up, because speeding things up is hard. If you try and do it backwards, if you try and speed up before you have a tempo, errors happen, mistakes happen, haste makes waste. Okay. I tell my people all the time, we've got to go as fast as we can, but we can't no faster. Because faster than we can go causes mistakes. We just need to go as fast as we can. And that's this tempo idea. We need to stop and think about what's going on in our projects so that we can think about doing things well and think about efficiency. And we go back to when we know that we're not doing the same thing over and over again, but we have this image that we're doing something similar. So we do task A and we think it's similar to task B that we've already done. And so we think, oh, okay, well, I've got experience about this. I know a process that'll work. I feel pretty confident that I can get this done. And there's a big trap in similarity. And I've seen this 100 times. In my example, and it may not be a great example, I can say that a tiger is similar to a house cat. And in certain ways, I'm right, but in other ways, I'm very, very wrong. And the number of times I'm wrong doesn't have to very much to do with the severity of being wrong. I can be wrong just on one little thing. And next thing you know, I've got tiger problems. Okay. If you've baked cake before, you say, yeah, I need to bake bread. Okay, well, I'm bake. Bread should be no problem. So you go start baking bread. The problem with your experience is you don't know where the difference is. And you don't know the magnitude of that difference. So, hey, I need bread flour. Well, how's that different from cake flour? I don't know. You may know, but it's different. So is that going to cause some kind of problems? Do we have it in the pantry? If we don't, then our project just exploded. When I was in project management, we used to have sort of a dismal joke, sort of a graveyard joke. And I would walk in and I would go, oh, we kicked that rock over and Godzilla jumped out from behind it. Okay, it can look like a little problem. It can look like a little difference. But when we get to it and we start analyzing it, it grows, and it can grow fast. And it's a seemingly small thing. And you look at it, you go, hey, This is going to take weeks to fix. Just like if you're thinking, well, I'm going to bake bread and I'm pretty good at baking cake, and you start baking bread and the recipe says, well, you need bread flour for bread. And you go, well, I don't have any bread flour. Well, now what do you have to do? Kerflooey. Now you got to go to the store. So experience is tricky. It's useful, but it's tricky. And so I think that we have to think carefully about these things. And that's my whole point with this experience thing. Okay. We just need to take the time to think it through and to be careful thinking it through. And in these ways, we can avoid wasteful behavior, because eliminating waste is the goal that we're trying to get to here. And figuring it out is a challenging thing. Okay. We can't just sit down and, okay, 30 seconds later. Efficiency is typically based on practice, repetition, and understanding, and is actually pretty mechanical. You can't figure out how to make widgets faster if you don't know how long it takes to make a widget. But once you know how long it takes to make a widget, it's pretty easy to come up with ideas, at least theories, about how it can be done better, faster. Making the widgets, that is. But then we still got to be careful, because we go, well, we need a new machine right there. Well, swapping out machine A for machine B can be a huge challenge and can have ripple effects in the rest of the process. So we just need to be careful and go slow. Our work is not routine enough to go with efficiency-based methods. In other words, pursuing productivity with efficiency-based methods, our work is not, I don't think, routine enough to do that. And so we need to pursue productivity by thinking. And we're chasing efficiency before we're able to produce efficiency. We just don't have enough experience in this knowledge work world. We're not making the same thing over and over again. Okay. So if you're thinking I got to manage my time, then I suggest you're managing the wrong resource, and you're trying to pack your schedule full of little tiny little things and be efficient in switching those things, but you don't have this baseline rhythm to start with. So new work is different from old work, and we talked about this. We're not just creating another widget, right? If all you need is last month's sales report, then you're going to Xerox a copy off. You're going to find the old one, Xerox copy. Okay, easy. Go home the rest of the day, right? But if you need to create this month's sales report, it's different. Okay. Now, you probably use lots of the same tools and lots of the same techniques, but that doesn't mean it's simple, because you don't know what the differences are until you try and do it. Okay. You start doing this month's sales report, and there's a whole new category of things that you didn't know the company was putting in place. Nobody told you. Well, okay, fine. You can complain about that, or you can go figure out how to get the data on the new thing that the company didn't tell you about. This is a big deal if you're doing this. It's a big problem. It's going to take some time to solve. Okay. And so just having some humility about that. Another thing that makes all of this difficult to figure out. So I'm talking now about the challenges of figuring out what we're doing, and encouraging you to take the time that it takes to do it and not try and rush the process. And that's where haste makes waste. So another thing that we have to try to figure out is, when we're thinking about knowledge work, there's a real challenge of understanding what done means. So we get into this all the time. I get into it all the time with perfectionism and procrastination, and I've done a few podcasts that mention this idea. But figuring out what done means is really hard. And we tend to overbake things. We tend to move into perfectionism here. And it's really tough to figure that out. So if you don't know what done is, then it's very difficult to say how long. And if it's very difficult to say how long, then slamming this stuff together is not going to work. And that's the nature of our work. Okay. we use analogies and we think about different things, and we talk about lots of physical processes for analogies. When you put a piece of meat in the oven, it's pretty easy to figure out when it's done. All you got to do is buy a probe thermometer and you poke it in there and you close the oven door and you cook your meat, and the alarm goes off and it's done. Okay. What we do is not that simple. We tend to inflate the level of quality. That's us, the producers. Okay. Another challenge to the idea of done is that done is a variable thing. And I'll prove that to you. Your view of what constitutes done 3 days before the deadline is very different than your idea of what constitutes done 3 minutes before the deadline. Very different thing. Even our customers don't know really what done is. Okay. Human beings, other people, and ourselves are satisficers. We'll take the best solution we can lay our hands on with a reasonable amount of effort. I've talked about this before, and I used an ice cream example. We don't globally search for the best ice cream in the world. We go a few places and we find the best ice cream we can find in a reasonable time frame, and then we're perfectly happy with it. We're satisficers. So then done has a lot to do with that. I can utilize an imperfect result. And I'd rather have an imperfect result quickly than a perfect result late, because I can do things with it. So this whole business of figuring out what done is challenging. And that's part of figuring out what we need to do and when we can get it done. It's hard to do. Now, we also said our brain serves up the result that needs to be true in the world. It doesn't naturally serve up process usually. And so we need to think back about the process that's going to produce the result and actually think in process terms. And that'll help us avoid these big chunky tasks that we tend to procrastinate. What's done? What constitutes done? How am I going to get the process to do that? Okay. So maybe I've convinced you that you need to spend more time thinking about what you need to do. I hope I have, because I think it's true. Management is a necessity. You've got a manager. They're doing it for you. If you don't have a manager, you got to do it for yourself. It's not a luxury, but it tends to get dispensed with pretty quick in our haste. So we go, oh, I don't need to manage myself because I'm in a hurry. Yes, because you're in a hurry, you need to manage yourself even more. Okay, Larry, you convinced me or you wore me down or whatever. I need to take more time. How do I go about it? Well, we got to think about what we're doing, and to think about it, we need a tool. So we got to think about the things that are getting on our list, and we need a tool to think about it. And this is where we go back to this backlog idea. Okay. Tasks go on the backlog, and we work the backlog consistently to refine the task. What is the task? What does it mean? What constitutes done? And we also can work on the priority. So it's this pre-planned, pre-prepared, flexible list of things. That's this backlog. And I told you that part of defining a backlog is how you manage it. And so this is the management piece. You interact with the backlog. So we're thinking about it a lot, and we're working in it a lot, and we're studying the tasks in it. And we take 10 minutes and we go look at our backlog and we go, oh, okay, I've got more information about this task, right? And we incorporate that as we go along. Okay. Priority changes a lot. We mentioned this. What's the priority of this task? Oh, well, I heard that Joe in the other department got something to the vice president. And so this is not as necessary as it once was. So I'm going to move it down the priority list. Great. Okay. That's effectively managing the trade-offs. Okay. So managing priority. So that's where the backlog as a tool comes in. It's a list of things that we can think about doing. And part of that is this mindset of needing to think about it. But if it's on this backlog, then we've got space to think about it. And that's as compared to a list where we don't think about it, we just start doing it. Plan to take the time. Don't short circuit this part of the process. Don't let hurry or the hustle culture put you in a position where you're engaging in suboptimal behavior. So great, Larry. I'm convinced. I need to take time. I don't have time. Where do I get the time? Okay, so you told me I need to take time. I got it. You told me a tool where I can work on this stuff, this backlog thing. I got you. I don't have time. Where do I get the time? Okay, well, I'll talk about steps for doing that. And there are a handful. So the first is it doesn't take as long as you think. So early on, it takes longer, but over time, as we get better at it, it takes less time and we learn to think in these ways habitually. It's not as hard. Okay. It might take an hour a day to effectively manage your list of stuff. Okay. And that's not a lot. Okay. Particularly as we compare it to probably the waste that's going on. That's very hard to see right now. And that's the second place. So first is it's not going to take as long as you think. Okay. Second is we're going to get rid of waste that has to do with interruption, multitasking, and distraction, and all this task switching that we wind up doing. Okay, we're gonna get those things managed. We're gonna put you in a position where you don't have to expose yourself to, let's say, communication interruption all the time. I would suggest that you're thrashing and you just don't see it. We need to take the time to slow down the task switching so we can think about what we're doing and complete things. And I mentioned this earlier. We need to complete what we're doing, and then we don't have to worry about it anymore. If we fast task switch, we're overlooking opportunities to gather information and to finish what we're doing well. If you're on a 30-minute long phone call, I don't think it's a hard guess to plan a minute or two to think back through it and make sure you captured the commitments that you made and the commitments that the other person on the call made. And then you've got it organized, you've got it straight, and you don't have to worry about it. And then we don't have to fast task switch, which is interruption or multitasking, but also we don't have the distraction of, gee, what was it that John asked me to do on the phone call? That's the first two places we get time. The third place we get time is by getting rid of the to-do list process. So we no longer work on this to-do list every morning. We replace it with a real process that supports the kind of thinking that we need to do. It takes a little bit longer in the instance, but it pays back over time through the day. You're probably spending more time making your to-do list than you thought you were. And there's reasons for this. Some of it have to do with the fact that it's an unstructured kind of a task. And part of it has to do with, well, a lot of us, as we're making the list, we're also doing things on the list. But it's challenging to notice. But we'll get some time back there. So that's the third way we get time. So the fourth way we get time is that we practice our new habits until they become routine and we don't have to think about them. So we get better. As I said before, we get better over the things we need to be doing. We get better at thinking about our task list. We get better at managing our backlog. We get better at capture, all those kinds of things. And getting better at these things is pretty simple. I ask people to do a lot of capture. Well, maybe you like to capture with a pen and a piece of paper. Do you have a pen and a piece of paper handy on your desk? Practice. How are you going to do that? Or is your pen in a drawer and your paper in the filing cabinet? Well, then we're going to have to get up and get this stuff organized. Okay. If your pen's in the drawer with your bills, you're going to open it up, you're going to grab the pen, you're going to see an overdue bill, and then whatever it was that you were trying to capture is gone. So we got to practice doing these things and get good at these things. And as we do, we'll get faster at them and they'll become more effective for us. So that's how we're going to begin to get this time back. 4 ways we're going to get the time back. So where have we gotten now? Okay. The fable we're attacking is, hey, it's quick and easy to figure out what I should do. I just know what I should do. It shouldn't take much effort. I don't have to spend much time managing this thing. So in order to make that fable come true, we do it too quickly and we wind up doing it poorly. And when we do this foundational work poorly, we get bad results. And then we say, okay, well, the process doesn't work. I agree. We need a better process. And that's what I'm trying to teach you in this podcast and through the attention compass training and all those things that I'm doing out there. Let's just get our process straightened out. Let's figure out how to manage ourselves. And attention compass is a big piece of that, because when we say manage ourselves, what we're talking about is managing our attention, managing our productive resource, being good stewards of our attention. So that's where we are. I do want to mention that I expect this podcast to release before October 29th, 2024. And that's important because October 29th is when we start the first meeting of the next Attention Compass training class. If you're interested in doing that, it's 1 hour a week of meeting plus 10, maybe 15 minutes a week of homework. And we'll meet for 8 consecutive weeks, same day and time each week. So if you'll spend 8 hours with me, you'll get those 8 hours back in the first month after we're done. If you don't, I've done something wrong and I'll fix it. So that's starting on the 29th. If you're interested, reach out to me, connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm not hard to find out there. Also, you can email me directly, larry@dobusyright.com. But let's go quick, because by the time you're listening to this, we'll just have a couple of days to get it sorted out and the class is filling up. Okay, so go ahead and act fast. Okay, so we can do this 8 weeks. We'll be done before Christmas. You can get off into 2025 on your best foot productivity wise. Have all this nailed down and be able to get your stuff done with less stress and overall less time. So I'll recap what we've talked about. Okay. The fable is, it's a mindset thing. Changing the mindset here is really key. And I can teach you the actionable steps. And we just talked about how to do that. Changing the mindset. The bad mindset is, this is easy. I'll just knock out a task list and then I'll get started doing it. The bad mindset is, I don't have time to plan. I've got to do. The new mindset that we want to take on is recognizing that managing ourselves is necessary and needs some thought, some effort, and some attention so that we can get ourselves organized and put our attention where it needs to be when it needs to be there. We talked about knowledge work, and the challenges of knowledge work involve several different things. Our work is not routine, so it's less procedural. And we have this rough scaffold process around it, but in detail, we just don't know it in detail. We can't know it because we're problem solving. We're inventing new information. We're inventing new knowledge. We're creating, and that never comes out as quickly as we hope. We went through some mental challenges that set this up. Mental challenges. Your brain doesn't serve up priority. Your brain serves up urgency. Another thing is your brain serves up results as compared to the first step of a process. That's a challenge. So then we got to think about the steps. We got to create the process to get to the result that our brain is asking us to produce. Process improvements. I don't know that we talked about this a whole lot, but if we're going to improve our process, those things, it's hard to fit them into a to-do list. That's the quadrant 2 stuff that gets just swallowed by the quadrant 1 urgent stuff. So they don't fit on there. So what happens? Well, we think of a process improvement or a need for a process improvement, and then we don't do anything about it. So our process doesn't get better. We spent a little time justifying the old phrase, haste makes waste. And the fable of task management is that there's a simple version of what happens in big time project management, and that we can utilize that simple version in a hurry and get results out of it. The answer to that question is, we talked about this a good bit, the answer to that question is there's really not a way to short circuit that big process. It's not quick and it's not easy. So we just have to give it the time it takes. Another mindset issue that we face is we focus on time efficiency when we should be focusing on attention. That's hurry sickness and multitasking and hustle culture. We're over task switching. We're over switching between tasks and we're trying to move too quickly. We're just trying to overclock ourselves. We can't do that. And I talked about Mike Krzyzewski, basketball coach. So we need to not try to overclock ourselves. We need more thought rather than less. We spent a little time talking about how experience works from situation A to situation B. We got to be careful because we can be overconfident because of our experience. Experience is a great thing, but it can also make us be overconfident. So we got to think about it. Okay. We don't know that a minor difference is a minor difference. We can guess it's a minor difference, but we don't know. And then these things that should have been minor blow up on us. And then we got this challenge. So we talked a little bit about all that. We talked in some detail about where do we get time for all this management structure. And we talked about 4 ways. We attack waste. Okay. And people think I'm saying, oh, don't watch Netflix. That's not what I'm talking about. The big chunks are your problem. Okay. If you know you're spending time watching Netflix and you complain to me about not having enough time to do stuff, I can't help you with that. But what I can help you do is I can help you attack the micro wastes and deal with that. And I think we spend a lot of time in that micro waste space. So we get in a hurry and we forget to do things well. And that's a form of micro waste. Over time, we're going to build habits so that doing the things that we need to do gets easier and faster and takes less time. And that's where we're going to be getting this time back. Eliminating waste and getting good at things because we understand what we're doing and we know what our process is. My goal with this episode, however, is to help you understand there's really not a shortcut. There's not a way to avoid investing time and managing your attention. It's a reality. It needs to be done. And if we focus on time efficiency, then that's just a way of putting our fingers in our ears and pretending it's not true. Jump from thing to thing to thing. And, this thrashing thing that we do, that just creates waste. So I hope that you're able to think about this in a new and different way. I hope that you're comfortable with the notion that, yes, I need to spend some time managing myself, and it needs to not be rush, rush, hurry, hurry when I'm doing that. And no, I can't overclock myself. So I've got to spend the correct amount of effort, because if I shortcut that effort, then nothing else can work out effectively. So I hope that you're walking away from this conversation with that in mind. And then the rest is just tool set, and we can work on how to do that through other episodes of the podcast or through joining me for an Attention Compass training session sometime soon. I'll leave it there for now. This is Larry Tribble, Ph.D. Thanks for taking some time to improve your task and information management on the Do Busy Right podcast. The show is dedicated to helping you think about how to get better at working. And we do this by improving your attention and your focus. I believe that your work is not just about your job, but about all the tasks that you do to turn yourself, your environment, and your relationships into what you want them to be. What we're really talking about here is the underpinnings of becoming who you want to be. The primary way I help people is through coaching the Attention Compass process. Attention Compass is 4 workflows and a tool set that support our information, task, and attention management. I help people with big goals to build habits that put them in a position to achieve. We do this by eliminating wasted time and wasted attention. If you'd like to know more, you can find me on LinkedIn or go to dobusyright.com for more information. Have a good week, more effective and less exhausted. Do Busy Right.